Thank you, Danny Citrinowicz, Senior Iran Program at National Security Studies and former head of Iranian Strategic Branch of Israeli Defense Intelligence. And I believe you were at the Iran nuclear desk before that?
as well.
Okay, as well. All right. So you've been working on Iran and Iranian issues for a while. We-
Definitely.
Yeah, for the past decade or so at least.
Definitely.
So let's start with the question that everyone has on their minds. What is the end game for Israel? Is it ending Iran's nuclear program, ending the regime, weakening Iran? What is the end game?
I think that the current government headed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, that actually is headed of numerous governments in the past. I think and by the way, not only his government, but also the government headed by Naftali Bennett before. I think it has only one thing in its mind. It's changing the regime in Iran. At the end of the day, Israel perceived Iran, the Iranian leadership, as a true danger, existential danger to the state of Israel. So they are highly interested in toppling the regime. And we saw that even in the 12 days of war, when it started on the nuclear and missile background, but definitely within the war itself, we saw declarations coming from Defense Minister Katz about killing Khamenei and what Israel tried to do in a Evin prison and against the Basij. Obviously, Israel tried to do something to undermine the regime itself. So for Israel, it's much more than just the nuclear and the missile. It's changing the regime. Unfortunately, as we all know, there is no one element in Iran that really can change the regime today. And that is why I think that this cause is something that it is very hard to achieve, definitely from attacking Iran from the air. But it also saw the fact, I think, that Israel do not understand the strength of the regime itself in Iran. It's not that it doesn't have legitimacy problems, obviously, and that didn't change even after the war itself. But the thing that you can topple the regime by bombing Evin prison or bombing the Basij, I think that it's a hopeless cause, and actually shows a lot about the misunderstanding in Israel regarding the Iranian stability.
So, sorry, when you talk to government officials, Israeli government officials, they want regime change. I mean, I like to be a little bit taller and I want to have more money, but how can I achieve that? And what is the alternative? What do they want to replace this regime with?
That is a major, major problem that you tackle because, as you all know, Israel has a very interesting relations with the son of the Shah, the Pahlavi, and I think that it's obviously that his ability to change the regime is, I'll say, not high, and this is not a statement for a guy that actually declared that he's not returning back to Iran. He has no intention of returning back to Iran in numerous interviews that he had.
What
But
do you mean by
because,
interesting? Sorry, Danny, I have to
yeah,
interrupt you. What
yeah.
by interesting relationship?
He came to Israel and he has a good relation with one of the ministries in the Israeli government, and then being mentioned a lot in the Israeli media as someone that can replace the regime itself. And it's really a hopeless cause. It's wishful thinking in so many ways. I don't think the chances of him replacing it's like he's not trying to return back some sort of romantic history of what we had with his father. Now, I understand that because we had strategic relations with Iran before the revolution, of course, with the Shah. But I think it's really, again, misunderstanding of also of the Iranian opposition. Actually, I think the relations between Pahlavi, the son, and Israel actually caused a lot of damage within the ranks of the Iranian opposition. And I think Israel need to be very careful when it's highlight this kind of connection. Not that I think that it can return back to Iran, because I think it's actually harming the unification of the opposition to the regime itself outside of Iran. So I think that this is, if this is actually the future of Iran as the Israeli government see that, it's obviously, again, we have things very wrong in terms of how we are seeing what would be the future of Iran itself. And this is another problem. We went to a war. We are asking to topple the regime, as mentioned before, but we really don't know. We're relying on someone that it won't return back to Iran. That's my basic assessment. And so, and then what? Okay, we're undermining the stability of the regime, and then what? So I think I think the option B of Israel is just weakening the regime itself. It's not looking for someone to replace it, just making sure it won't be any threat to the state of Israel. The other problem that I had is connected to that is maybe, people in Israel talking about traumatization of Iran because Iran, country or minorities. It's another major problem because when you're talking that to the ordinary Iranian, actually what is happening is you are making sure that he, despite the fact that maybe he has enmity towards Khamenei, but he doesn't want to see Iran fragmentized in so many ways. So I think those declarations coming from Israel actually cause unification on the Iranian side. So Israel has no, I think, strategic solution for that. So the thing that we are doing is threatening like killing Khamenei, transforming him to a shaheed or martyr for I don't know how many generations. Those are coming from lack of understanding of the Iranian opposition. And I think this is another problem because, for example, I think that the change in Iran can come from within. Again, it's a long shot, but I think it has better option than thinking that the son of the Shah returned back to Iran.
So when you say they want the son of the Shah to come back to Iran, what do you mean by they? Is this something that different Israeli officials or different people, different factions within the Israeli establishment agree on? Naftali Bennett and Ben Netanyahu and other people, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, and others, they like the son of the Shah to come to Iran and they're helping him to return to Iran? Or is this a wishful thinking that they say, okay, if someone comes back to Iran, it should be the son of the Shah? And also, how is the relationship between the current Israeli government, or let's say Prime Minister Netanyahu, with other Iranian opposition figures or opposition parties?
So we saw, out in the open, we see only the connection with the son of the Shah. Netanyahu met with him when he was in Israel. Gila Gamliel, the Intel Minister of Israel, or whatever what it calls, have a good cooperation with him, meeting with him. We had also interviews of him in the Israeli media. So definitely, the only figure that you can see in Israel regarding to the Iranian opposition is the son of the Shah. The only figure. Now, I don't think that Israel, I hope so, that no one really thinks that we can, we are not changing the regime of Hamas in Gaza for the year and a half. I don't think that someone in Israel really think that we can actually put back the son of the Shah in Iran. I think it's more like we don't have any other option. This guy, we had great cooperation with his father. He talks the right way, that Israel and Iran should be friends. Maybe in the future we need to build some sort of alliance, whatever. So I think it sounds good. So they are not supporting him, but it looks like the leader of the Iranian opposition. But basically, I don't really think that we have a plan. I think Israel in the past, like we did, tried to do in Lebanon in '82, another. Israel has no ability to change regimes in the Middle East. Even Bashar al-Assad that was toppled, partially because what Israel did, tackling Hezbollah. I think it wasn't something that we thought it will happen. It will happen. It was again coincidence. So I think the bottom line of things that Israel has no ability to change the regime in Iran. I think everything that we are doing right now, especially we did in 12 days war regarding this kind of target, again mentioned before, Devin and Basij and others, I think actually harm our ability to create some sort of a gap between the regime and the population itself. Actually, we highlighted everything that Khamenei said from day one, that Israel has, the problem is not Iranian nuclear program or missile program. Israel wants to change the regime itself. And I think it's another problem that we created during this war. I'm not saying now that, that there is no problem between the population in Iran and the leadership in Iran. Definitely the problems are there. But for the short term, for sure, they managed to hide everything, any problem that they had, by rallying around the flag. So I think this is another problem. So we'll touch the 12 days war. But definitely, operationally, it was amazing in terms of what Israel did. But strategically, in terms of the relationship between the regime and the population, we did everything wrong. And that's, I think that we'll pay pass for it if we'll get into some sort of attrition war with
Yeah,
Iran.
actually, I wanted to ask you about that because you know people within the intelligence community in Israel, you know people within the military community in Israel, and I mean, the military operation by Israel in Iran, it was undeniably successful. The intelligence gathering in terms of Iran's nuclear program, where the Revolutionary Guards commanders lived, and how to target them, that was undeniably successful as well. But it seems that there is a threshold of understanding for the Israeli intelligence or intelligence community that they do not understand the Iranian narrative. They do not understand how do Iranians feel about their country. And that really crystallized for me when they attacked Evin prison, and the Israeli foreign minister said, "Bravo, this is the Liberation Day." And in the meantime, we saw dozens of Iranian political prisoners, including people who hate this government, died during it, and many Iranians who even criticized the government, they resented that. Do you agree with me that that the while Israel has a good intelligence gathering and maybe a spy operation in Iran, it fails to understand the Iranian narrative?
You're absolutely right, 100%. I think that, it's remarkable how you see the difference between the operational intelligence that we have, knowing where Bahari lives, where Salami lives, where Haji Zadeh lives, exactly to find them, all the nuclear scientists, and in exact moment, decapitating all of them, not allowing Iran to retaliate. And we know that they tried to build some sort of program to retaliate for any Israeli attack. Those things show you the level of penetration that Israel had, intelligence penetration in Iran. Also, Mossad elements on the ground, together simultaneously with our air force attacking the launchers and the senior commanders of the RGC and others. So definitely that is amazing. But in parallel to that, you see us attacking a Evin prison. And you ask yourself, and I asked myself the same thing when I saw the attack, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? Now, Israel said from day one of the war, we went for war. Actually, that went for war. That don't think that we had the ability to achieve the target that we aim to do, because as we know, we see today there will be capabilities left over, for Iran to be used, whether the centrifuges or the enriched uranium. You cannot reach the last launcher and the last missile. So definitely we went to a war that we couldn't achieve all the targets. But even more than that, during the war, it seems like we tried to do something else, attacking Evin prison. And this is something very, very bad that happened because, the innocent lives that lost there. But even more than that, the fact that what is the message to the Iranian public when you're doing what? What you thought that will happen? That people, will march on the streets. So, you have the dissidents of the regime going out of doing what? And this is actually crystallize the fact, like you said, that Israel knows a lot what's happening within Iran intelligence-wise. But I don't think we understand Iran as a whole. We think that Iran is a weak state, that, with minorities and a lot of problems, and we think that it's very easy to topple it. But again, we're forgetting what happened in the Iraq-Iranian war. This regime is resilient. Yes, it has multiple problems, not connected to Israel, not connected to defense, from the pollution in Tehran and the water shortage and the Afghani refugees that we see what's happening now, and the drugs, and so many problems in the regime itself. But this regime still holds on. And what we did in the 12 days of the war, we weakened the capabilities of the regime. But we definitely didn't tweak its resilience. And unfortunately, we helped them in unify the Iranian public behind the Iranian regime. So I think it's remarkable to see the differences between the operational achievement and misunderstanding strategically how Iran really works and how the regime is really holds on and what is relations with the population of Iran.
And what do
And
you
prior to that, one other aspect, of course, is bombing the Iranian broadcasting services. Now, I'm not saying that during the war you want to prevent the regime from interacting with the population, but connecting that to Evin, then it looks like in a different light. So again, it's causing a lot of questions again for me for sure about what was the real goal and what we really tried to achieve, because I think those connections, those things are harming the Israeli way of thinking in terms of weakening the regime, actually strengthening it.
And what you contributed to, do you contributed to the Israelis' lack of understanding, or also it's part of this hubris and, getting carried away with the military victories and intelligence victories, than thinking that, well, we have this military might and we have this intelligence might, so we can do whatever the hell we want and we would be successful.
The problem that I think we have, 7th of October caught us by surprise, devastating attack by Hamas. But since the 7th of October, Israel actually destroyed the axis of resistance in terms of what's happening now in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Bashar al-Assad in Syria, even in Iraq, the Shia are highly afraid of Israel. So, but I think the problem is the hubris. And also connected to the amazing, blow that Iran encountered in the first 24 hours of the war. And I think that we really, and looking also into the future, and this is another problem that we have, we really think that we can change the Middle East by using force alone. No political agreements, no need for political agreements in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza Strip, and nothing regarding Iran. And now we all know that the best way to make sure that the Iranians won't break out into a bomb is returning back the IEA inspection regime. But Israel has no intention in agreeing to anything in relation to agreeing or to some sort of agreement with Iran. And this is so problematic because we see, for example, how the Gulf states are looking at Israel. And we might think, yeah, we're weakening the biggest rivalry, so definitely they like us, whatever. But I think that they're afraid, like most of the other countries, that Israel is really trying to change the Middle East by force. And the only way to interact, to be integrated into the Middle East, is only by peaceful solutions that also embedded the Palestinian issue. And not only attacking Iran and thinking, okay, it will help us in interaction or building normalization with Saudi Arabia. And we see what happened after the war. Nothing has changed. People thought in Israel that everything would change. Nothing has changed. So I think in that regard, the hubris of the use of force alone will not help the Israeli interest for the long run. But unfortunately, I'm not sure that we understand that right now. And I'm fearing that we will return back to war with Iran because Iran will try to rebuild the capabilities without understanding that this time things might be different.
And I mean, it's somehow also easy to criticize Israel because it's a relatively open society. Reporters can come there, they can film, they can talk to different officials. But also, I think it's as a scholar of Iranian affairs, it's important to ask you about the Iranian misunderstanding of Israel because do you read Persian, I guess?
Arabic,
Okay,
unfortunately,
you read that.
not Persian.
But you
Uh,
go through, you review the Iranian
every day, every
publications
day,
every day,
every day.
and you understand about this myth and disinformation that's published in Iranian papers,
Yes.
including what recently the former head of the parliament and the minister of culture, Ali Larijani, said about Israelis that they are not patriotic, and as soon as a war happens, they just leave Israel for their own countries, meaning that most people in Israel, they are not from Israel. What are the misconceptions and misinformation that you see about Israel among Iranians?
Yeah. Well, I'll say about the Iranian regime, and there is a lot of misunderstandings that I think actually contribute to the war, the 12-day war. I think that, I saw President Pezeshkian talking about the fact that when they're calling death to the America, it's not death to America, or whatever, it's they try to find excuse. When the Iranians are chanting death to Israel, and they're trying to advance in the nuclear program, regardless the fact that we all know that if Iran tried to reach a bomb today, it's to secure the regime, not to put a bomb on a missile and shoot it against the state of Israel. Now, I'm not saying that Iran having a bomb is a good development. It's a very bad development for the region. But the Iranians never thought about using that in order to kill everyone in Israel by nuclear bombs. But when the Iranians are advancing in the nuclear side and shouting death to Israel, and now advancing, their capabilities on a verge of 90%, this kind of connection create the understanding in Israel that the Iranians are close to annihilate Israel, to destroy Israel. And it's obvious when Khamenei talk about destruction of Israel, he's talking about the Palestinian taking over, kicking out the Jews outside of Palestine, whatever, something that won't happen in the foreseeable future, and good for that. But I think they need to understand that. And operationally, they didn't understand that everything that the international community in Israel could absorb regarding their progress on the nuclear program in the past, after the collapse of Hezbollah and the break of what I call the field barrier of Israel to attacking Iran when we attacked Iran in last April and last October, they failed to understand that without reaching an agreement with the US on the nuclear side, Israel will attack them. Because the combination, as mentioned before, the Israelis do not really understand, the bits and bytes of when Khamenei talking about death to Israel and talking about, the future of Palestine and or Israel, and when you're talking about the nuclear side and what it tends to, it's a lot of misconception and people saying, okay, a country that calls for destruction, moving towards nuclear bomb, we have to do something because otherwise it's going to be a Holocaust. Now, I don't think that someone in Iran really thought about it, but in Israel, it's crystal clear that because Iran tried to destroy us, they will use that eventually, these capabilities. And this is actually push Israel to do what it did in the 12-day war. So that is a major misunderstanding how the Iranian behavior towards Israel. Now, we can talk about tomorrow about the fact that the Iranians, first and foremost, is not about destruction of Israel. It's about securing the regime and all those things. But for Israel, also in Iran, they failed to understand that the politicization of Israel is Iran and everything else. It's not like Iran when you have the US, you have Iraq, Saudi Arabia, all other things that are equally even more important regarding comparing to Israel. For Israel, it's Iran. So I think that they also failed to understand how concentrated we are and everything that's happening in Iran itself. So I think that it's a misunderstanding that unfortunately I don't think it will change, and this is causing me to think that the chances of renewal of the war are higher than people might think, because as we are thinking that, and I can say even more than that, in Israel politics, no one is challenging Netanyahu with that. We have fierce discussion about the future of Gaza, the West Bank, but even from the left side of Netanyahu, people like Gantz, like Lapid, they don't really think about that Netanyahu's policy towards Iran is a bad thing. They support it because they think the Iranians are trying to kill us, so definitely we have to do something about it. This is why when we had the government of unity before, or government of change, before Netanyahu, when Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid were prime ministers, they did the same thing as Netanyahu. They focused on Iran. So the thing is that the Iranians failed to understand how much the thing that they are doing, even if they're not intending, it created the notion in Israel that they're coming for destruction momentarily. So we have to do something about it.
And what do you think the Iranians, especially the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic regime, and its supporters do not understand about Israeli patriotic feelings and Israelis' deep feelings about their country? I mean, forget about the religious groups and the way that think biblically about Israel, but I'm talking about the average secular Israelis, which I think they are the majority of the country. How do they feel as patriotic Israelis about their country? That as a secular Israeli, how would you explain that to an average Iranian or regime supporter?
I think it's a very good question because, there is a lot of people in Israel challenging the government decision regarding everything related to security developments, the ending war in Gaza and everything related to what's happening in Syria and the fact that we are not out reaching our hands to Jolani or Shah or whatever, and everything related to what we are doing in the West Bank and settlement, thing like that. So we have a lot of discussion within Israel, but the normal secular Israelis that live in Israel, at the end of the day, see Iran as the major threat, existential threat on the state of Israel. It's because of 30 years of Netanyahu trickling down this notion towards the ordinary Israeli civilian. And even more than that, everything that the Iranian did actually contribute to that. So the fact of the matter is that when the war started, Nobody said, "Oh, we should question the motives of Netanyahu regarding this war." He's on trial. He's coming for a very tough situation in his trial right now because he's now debriefed by the prosecution and things like that. Nobody said that because they are all convinced that it's such a major threat that if Netanyahu decided to attack now, we should support him. And that leads to the fact that the Iranians might think that if they will launch missiles towards the population Israel, then there'll be a pressure on Netanyahu to stop the war. And I think that was the wrong thing to think. And not that it didn't cause a lot of damage within Israel, that's obvious. But I think that we are so convinced that we had to initiate this war because otherwise we were confronted by a nuclear holocaust that not only the right religious parties in Israel supported Netanyahu. Netanyahu had a lot of support from all other Israelis. Most of Israel supported that. Now, at the end of the day, you can question, you can challenge, but the bottom line is that the majority of Israelis, regardless whether you supported Netanyahu or not supported Netanyahu, supported this war that perceived as a preemptive attack to prevent the Iranians to build the capabilities to destroy the state of Israel.
And as you know, at Iranwire, we regularly have Holocaust education material, and actually, we are the only Middle Eastern media outlet outside of Israel that has Holocaust education regularly. And one of the reasons for me to continue with this work is that the Iranians, they have to understand about the Holocaust because in order to understand Israel, they have to understand the Holocaust and they have to understand the memory of the 6 million Jews who were killed by the Nazis and their collaborators. How much do you think that memory of Holocaust is present in Israel now, in Israeli politics, in his Israeli psyche, and how much does that influence the policies of whatever government that Israel has, militarily, politically, etc.?
It has a vast influence. Because, as you know, as Israelis, we are remembering, we have the Holocaust, we have a special day for it, but we are remembering Holocaust all of the year long. Most of Israeli has someone that knew someone in terms of, the grandfather or the grandfather regarding that. And the sense of independence of Israel and surviving here in the Middle East is something that is embedded within every Israeli. So I think what's happening is, unfortunately, but this is the reality, that our politicians are using that to make sure that we understand that the threat from Iran is like the threat of the Nazis in 1938 before invading to Europe. Now, I think that Khamenei is a fierce adversary of the state of Israel. And what he's doing is all creating of the axis of resistance and all the things is really a threat to the state of Israel. But he's no Hitler. And the Iranians are not Nazis. Same with Hamas. Hamas, terror organization, that a criminal organization. But at the end of the day, they are not Nazis because it's a different way of thinking, different methodology, different. You can't compare regarding history. But when you are using that, and this is another thing that the Iranians are failing to understand, when they're using that to make sure that people understand the level of threat coming from Iran, and you're comparing the Iranians to the Nazis and comparing Khamenei to Hitler, then it's making you easier to gain support to your actions against Iran. And even more than that, Netanyahu knew that the Israeli population will pay price for this war. 29 people died, hundreds or 1,000 wounded. We have 15,000 people that lost their houses. But for Netanyahu, he thinks that they understand that they fought against the new Nazis. So we didn't have any other choice but to do that. And they are unfortunately paying the price for it. But it's a price worth paying in a national level, given the fact that we're preventing Iran from acquiring a bomb. Unfortunately, we didn't prevent anything. We caused a lot of damage. We didn't prevent the Iranians' ability to reach a bomb. But I think at the end of the day, I think the unification of the Holocaust with Iran helped Netanyahu to really illustrate the level of threat coming from Iran. And again, the Iran are not the Nazis. Not that I'm supporting of this regime. On the contrary, it's a very bad regime that put a lot of threat to the state of Israel. But I really think that this regime think first and foremost of his survival, rather than other things related to his man. So this is why I think that what you mentioned is extremely important in terms of the remembrance of the Holocaust and how you're connecting that to Iran, and that create the support of anything that we will do in Iran today and even to do toward the future.
So I know that you wear so many different hats, and you've been wearing different hats in the past few decades. Let's talk about the nuclear program. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been warning about Iran's nuclear program since 1992, when he had a speech in the Knesset, when he was the at the time KP. And was that the first time that Israel took the Iran's nuclear danger seriously, or they had been thinking about, or they knew about the Iranian nuclear program before Netanyahu's 1992 speech?
It's interesting because when you look at the Israeli newspapers in 1985, 1986, you have the headlines of Khomeini decided to reach a nuclear bomb. But I think the first prime minister that really took this threat seriously is the late Yitzhak Rabin. It actually talked about the need to reach an agreement with the Palestinians as a mean to pressure the Islamic Republic of Iran. So he thought, and I'm truly supportive of that, that the best way to pressure Iran is actually interacting with the Middle East and solving the Palestinian problem that gives an excuse to Iran to meddle in the Middle East. So I think that he was the first one. Definitely Netanyahu took that to a different level. But we have to remember that the reason that Iran abandoned the military route to a bomb in 2003 is not connected to Israel. It's connected to the US presence in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the fact that Khamenei thought they would be next after the Iran opposition revealed regarding Natanz and all those activities. So I think that yes, he took that seriously, but at the end of the day, first, the Iranians left the nuclear military route not because of him. And secondly, we have to be acknowledgeable to the fact that the reason that Iran was on the verge of the 90%, partially is because of Netanyahu's policies. You know, pushing the US outside the JCPOA, no strategy to counter it. The fact that we actually didn't or weren't able to cope with the Iranian enrichment capabilities. So I think, yes, we went to war, but at the end of the day, the reason that we found Iran so close to 9% is also because of our policy. Netanyahu keeps saying that because of our activities, we prevented Iran from reaching a nuclear bomb. Unfortunately, he's not right. Because 2003, they abandoned the Ahmad project. It was formed to be SPND, Sapan. But Iran really invested in the enrichment side and freezing the military activities until probably a year ago when the status started to return back to Ahmad project papers. So everything that Israel did in the last 15 years was against the Iran nuclear enrichment capabilities, and of course, we dramatically failed. So yes, Netanyahu put that first place, but most of the time he didn't actually push them back. And unfortunately, I'm not sure, despite all achievements that we had, you know, in destroying probably Natanz and Americans destroying Fordo and destroying the conversion line in Isfahan and the factory to build the centrifuges in Karaj and whatever. I'm not sure that we prevented the Iranians from reaching a bomb. Unfortunately, I think that we pushed the Iranians over the Rubicon in terms of the fact that I think they'll feeling now more motivated in terms of finding a solution that will prevent Iran and Israel to prevent US and Israel to bomb Iran in the future. And we know that they have capabilities to do so, not on the industrialized level, but more a boutique capabilities. So I'm not sure that even the previous war actually prevented Iran from reaching a bomb. So yes, Netanyahu put that the most important thing for him, whatever, but most of the time I think it was counterproductive and actually led to different results.
Let's get to that a bit later, but I want to go back to 2002 when the Iranian opposition group, the MEK, the Mujahideen Khalq, they had a press conference in DC and they revealed the Iranian nuclear program, militarized nuclear program in Natanz. At that time, there were some rumors, and still there are some rumors that the Israelis gave that information to the Mujahideen Khalq at that time, the MEK. What do you know about the Israeli MEK relationship? And do you think it's true that the Israelis gave that information to the MEK?
Well, I have to say that I really don't know, and if I knew, I'm not sure I was able to say something about it. I can say, in general terms, definitely the information was brought to Natanz was a very in-depth information, so that I'm not sure that the MEK itself gathered all the information. Again, I'm not saying that Israel helped them because we know that there are other countries, organizations that looking at Iran in a way, in the intelligence way, in terms of trying to understand what's happening there. So I'm not saying Israel gave them. They maybe got information from other sources, but definitely it was convenient for everyone that the MEK will present this information. Sometimes you want other element to present that to preserve your sources, to preserve, making sure that maybe to get more credible in terms of their declaration. So, turning back 23 years ago, maybe someone helped them, but I think I'm not sure that it's important now. What it is important that this kind of declaration coming from the MEK and the presence of US invading Afghanistan after 9/11 and Iraq, this is something that actually showed the supreme leader of Iran back then that if we continue trying to reach a bomb, working with Fakhrizadeh, then at the end of the day, that is putting the regime is in much more danger than just trying to reach a bomb. So this is why he decided to stop the military route, understanding that if it will continue, then maybe Iran will be next in terms of the U.S. invasion, maybe to Iran. So I think that was an important element because, even when discussing today, what really happened in Iran nuclear research that actually pushed Israel to the attack, nobody is saying that Khamenei instructed those scientists to build a bomb. They did probably something to be prepared if Khamenei will say that, because we had dramatic strategic changes in the Middle East for Iran, especially after the weakening of Hezbollah and what happened with Bashar al-Assad. But nobody said that Khamenei changed his policy of the 2003 policy. They did something. They probably crossed the red line, but nobody told them to build a bomb. So I think it's also obvious, also important, because I think returning back 2003 is still an important year, because now I'm asking myself, and I think this is the biggest question that the Iranian analysts try to think right now and to try to answer, whether the 2003 instructions that Khamenei had to his scientists, leave the military route aside, whether now we'll see a dramatic change. Because in Iran, despite the capitation of the scientists and everything, yeah, it's a vast country with the technological platform is very vast. And it's not going to be hard for them to find nuclear scientists that can, again, I'm not saying it can be easy to build a bomb, but I think that with the motivation that they have right now, and with the scientific platform that Iran has, if Khamenei would decide to build a bomb, I'm not sure that we're able to prevent that from happening.
Also, we have to remember that in 2003, Khamenei was 22 years younger, and he's 86 years old now. He
Yeah.
was 64 at that time. And as we all know, some people, most people, most men between 64 and 86, they deteriorate. And Khamenei is not the same person. But at the same time, in many cases in Iran, we have seen that Khamenei's wishes are his agent's desire. And I remember that after the chain killing of the intellectuals in 1998 or 1999, Khamenei had a speech saying that I'm 100% certain that this was done by the Israelis. And then we saw that there are some videos of interrogators forcing people to confess that they
Yeah.
acted on Israelis' behalf. So, yes, something like that may happen.
I want to say one thing that actually echoes what you said. I think that definitely is not the same guy and same leader, and we saw that last April when the Iranian decided to launch the 300 missiles and UAVs toward Israel after the assassination of Mahdavi. And I think it actually showed that it's not that it's only getting weaker, that the most, let's say, military wing at the SCNS is becoming much more motivated to work against the state of Israel. You had Bahari, you had Haji Zadeh, you had Salamin. I think that their influence on Khamenei was important enough for him to allow something that I didn't think it will allow, to strike directly the state of Israel. So I think definitely people are changing. And we saw also after the 12 days, his speeches, something, I'd say, snapped in Khamenei, but something changed. So I think that it's also putting a burden on us as Iranian allies to understand how the decision-making process in Iran will look like in the near future, because they have mounting decisions to take regarding negotiation with the US, regarding what they're going to do with the nuclear material that left in Isfahan and in Fordow, what will happen with the Iranian nuclear strategy, the forced buildup of the missiles, and everything related to the balance between let's say, the more political diplomatic wing, headed by the President Pezeshkian, and now the newly elected commanders of the RGC and the Chief of Staff, how that will plays in, because as we mentioned, Khamenei probably is much more, I'll say, easy to influence, but definitely something happened there. So all this triangle between them, between Khamenei, the political array, and the military array, they how everything works between them and the balance of power will have a vast influence on how Iran will develop or will take a decision regarding this mounting question that it faces today, mainly regarding relations with Israel, the US, and what to do with the forced buildup, including the nuclear side.
I mean, he's gotten older, Khamenei, definitely, but he's also become more dictatorial. He's becoming a more of an absolute monarch, unlike what he was maybe before 1990,
Definitely.
1998, because of the Ahmadinejad's presidency, when Khamenei gained more power, consolidated more power, and then after the 2009 Green Movement and 2019 protests, and then 2022 Women Life Freedom Movement, all of them made Khamenei a little bit more dictatorial, I believe, and also at the same time, he's been thinking more about his legacy. So we have to see, unfortunately, to see whether he wants his legacy to be the nuclear program and resistance, or it can be a country safe from attacks. But let's go back to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is not as old as Khamenei. How old is Netanyahu now? I forgot.
I think 74, 75,
Or so,
something like that.
yeah, it's like 12 years younger now.
Yeah.
He's still, still a young guy. So he said today that we're going to wait. Today is the 11th of July, 2025. He said this morning, Netanyahu said this morning that we're going to wait for 60 days to see if Iran's nuclear threat is going to go away, and then we're going to take the next step. What do you think will be the next step based on what you're saying? Based on what you said, the nuclear threat will not go away. What will be the next step?
Unfortunately, there is what I think we should do and what unfortunately we will do, and I'm not supportive of that. I think that, as mentioned, I think that the best solution will be a nuclear deal, will allowing Iran to sort of a safe face mechanism regarding enrichment, and then we're turning back the the inspectors to Iran. I think it's something that is crucial, because the main thing that Israel needs to take or to worry right now is not regime change in Iran. That won't happen. And I totally agree with you about the dictatorship behavior of Khamenei, that actually I think will only get more to the extreme, definitely, when they try to look for those who work with Israel and things like that. So I'm very of negative news regarding how we treat the Iranian population, unfortunately. But I think that definitely what Israel will try to do is not agreeing anything related to a nuclear agreement between the US and Iran. And unfortunately, if Iran will try to rebuild itself, its capabilities, I can really see in high probability that Israel will try to do something kinetically. in order to prevent Iran from building capabilities. Now, that is a major problem because I really think that the Iranians will retaliate. And that's what I think that, assuming that the US will give us a green light, we can find ourselves in a renewed round of clashes between Israel and Iran. That can only be prevented by an agreement. Again, Israel has good relation with the U.S., but U.S. will do what in favor of the U.S. interest, and maybe Witkoff and RG can find some sort of common ground. I think they were very close to an agreement beforehand. All the consortium idea. So maybe if they can reach that, and returning back to the inspection regime, then I think Israel's ability to attack Iran will be very limited, slim to none. But with no agreement and with Iran trying to rebuild its capabilities, I don't think that Israel can. I think Israel still thinks that it has an operational window that it can work. The Iranians still have a problem with their air defense. Their missile capabilities are highly degraded. So I really think that Israel might try to attack them again, and Israel also declaring that. So this is not the end of the Iranian-Israeli clash, and without some sort of political solution, renewed violence can occur in the next couple of weeks or months.
So you think that if Iranians reach an agreement with the Americans in the next round, whenever that is, there will be less probability that Israel attack?
Definitely, without an American green light. We talk about what made Israel, what pushed Israel to the attack. So we talked about weakness of Hezbollah, the failure barrier being broke. Everything related to Bashar al-Assad, and the fact that we can do whatever we want in Syrian skies. All those things are important, but the most important thing was the green light that we got from President Trump, and we saw how dominant he is regarding the Israeli decision-making process when after the last barrage of missiles of Iran towards Beersheba, when we decided to attack aggressively Tehran, he stopped the airplane while they were in the Iranian airspace before they're attacking Iran. So I think that it's actually highlighted the fact that without a U.S. green light to Israel to attack in Iran, we can say whatever we want. I don't think that we are attacking Iran. Especially, we're also dependent on the help of the American side in terms of the ballistic missiles and their capabilities to help us defend our nation. So if the Americans and the U.S. with Iran and the U.S. reach an agreement, I don't think that Israel can able to do anything in the future kinetically regarding Iran unless something dramatic will happen.
There's another school of thought that Israel attacked Iran on June 13th in order to disrupt the Iran-US negotiations. Do you think that the Netanyahu government really thought that that the Iranians were 1 month from building a bomb, or it was to disrupt the negotiations between Iran and the US?
So I found those are very important questions. First, I think that Trump gave Israel a green light because he thought that it will bring back the Iranians weaker to the negotiation. Because Trump, despite the Israeli attack and despite the American attack on Fordo and Natanz and Isfahan, he never left the idea of reaching an agreement with Iran. So I think for him, it was everything is like, war is a diplomacy in a different way. For Israel, I think it was a different way of thinking. I think that we are hoping that this attack will not renew the negotiation. Iran will still be isolated. Its ability to rebuild the program is there, but maybe with the green light of US will prevent anything that they will try to do. And even more than that, I think that, Iran wasn't on the verge of building a bomb. Even Netanyahu said that in the US a couple of days ago, that a year, this is what he said. If we didn't say we won't do anything, then Iran within a year will build a bomb. So a year, it's not the final stretch of a bomb. I think that we had the operational opportunity. We had the green light. Really thought that it can maybe undermine the regime in a way that it will change the Middle East. But so the nuclear excuse was there, but definitely it wasn't like was presented at the beginning that it was the last mile of building an Iranian bomb. But again, we work together, alliance with the US side, but for different strategic goals. And this is a big question, what will happen now if the US will try to reach an agreement? then the Israel what's going to do. And as I mentioned, because of the dependence on Netanyahu with Trump, I don't think that if there will be an agreement, that Israel will be able to do something dramatically against Iran, unless something dramatic will happen in Iran itself. But again, it really minimizes the chances that of the renewed violence between Israel and Iran.
Well, Danny Citrinowicz, thank you so much. It was, I mean, I hope that next time we talk, it will be about the ceasefire between Iran and Israel, official ceasefire
Yeah.
between Iran and Israel, because at the moment, Iran has not said that they have a ceasefire with Israel. And maybe we can hope even for a better cooperation and better future relationship between the two countries.
I have to say, first, thank you for the opportunity. And again, I'm following your work extensively and really admire it. And I think it's extremely important work because, as Iranian analysts would try to reach any sort of information and also analysis. So what you are doing is really amazing in terms of ability to really understand what's going on within Iran itself. I want to say something about towards the future regarding Israel and Iran relations. I thought and I wrote about it in the Atlantic Council that there need to be some sort of, I'll say, red line between Tehran and Jerusalem, but ability to pass back and forth messages between both countries. I think, as we discussed, Iranians do not understand Israel, Israel does not understand Iran. And I think in order to create an understanding, again, this regime doesn't want to Iran, Israel to exist. And in Israel, we hope to topple this regime. But I think, assuming that nothing will change, then there need to be some sort of coordination in terms of ability to pass back and forth messages. That is crucial to prevent another war. This is one aspect. The other aspect that we have some sort of a romantic way of thinking that the Iranians, civilians will march toward the Supreme Leader office or the Azadi Square and shouting, death to Khamenei, or whatever, and the regime will collapse and the position will be with them. I think that the higher probability of that is regime change within. I think when Khamenei will die, I think there will be a regime change in Iran, regardless whether they're going to see the RGC taking over or reformists or whatever. We have to take in consideration that the changes within Iran can change the Iranian policy. Even if the regime will stay as it is, we'll have a new supreme leader, whatever, things can change. And I thought, for example, President Rouhani, I don't think he was a pacifist or a Zionist, but he couldn't care less about Israel. He just cared about rebuilding of Iran itself. So I think can be a change, and we have to be very, very sensitive about changes within Iran itself, because even from the regime itself, we can find maybe someone that actually can change Iranians' behavior in terms of interacting with the West. I'm not talking about opening embassies in Israel, but I'm talking interacting with the West and maybe easing the pressure and the tension between both countries. So again, I don't say I'm pessimistic or
Live and
optimistic,
let
but
live. Live and let live.
exactly.
It was and people forget that even before the revolution, during the Shah's time, Israel did not have an official embassy in Iran.
I agree.
And Iran, they did not have a de jure political diplomatic relationship. They had a de facto political and diplomatic relationship.
Exactly.
But always, and many Iranians as well. I mean, you mentioned Rouhani, and there was Rafsanjani, and many other pragmatists. They believe in the Malaysian way of thinking about Israel. That the government of Malaysia has nothing to do with Israel. Maybe they don't like Israel or whatever, but they don't wake up and chanting, chant
Definitely.
Israel,
Yeah,
and try to help Hamas and Hezbollah, etc., to attack Israel, and live and let live. And I think that
exactly.
should be the goal first. And maybe eventually we can hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But in the first, as the first step, we just have to be able to understand that we are not enemies. We don't have any real beef with each other. We don't have any borders. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and if Israel will promote something regarding the Palestinians, and will something that allow it to normalize its relations with Saudi Arabia, then I think that the Iranians' ability to center its activity in the Middle East will actually, I'll say, demolish, but will be weakened. So Israel can do steps on the political route that actually can, like you said, what is the beef? What is the beef? Yes, but if they will stop shouting death to Israel, and we turn back to, or if they will shun death to Israel, but we turn back the inspection regime, then I think without a nuclear ability or without the ability to reach a nuclear bomb, the ability to threaten Israel is really limited, especially when we see what's happening with the Axis right now. So I think that we have to take also these things into consideration. Not everything starts and ends with Iran. For the Israeli politician, it's easy because it's a threat that's very easy to explain why it's a threat, whatever. But we have to focus. What Netanyahu really thought about in the past is I will deal with Iran, weaken Iran. I'll have normalization with Saudi Arabia and UAE, and then automatically they will influence the Palestinian not to get some sort of independence or maybe some small whatever entity they will build. But it doesn't work like that. Despite our supportive regarding Iran, despite the fact that you're focusing on Iran, at the end of the day, Israel needs to solve the Palestinian issue as a leeway to interact also with Iran itself. So I think this is another aspect that's very important to highlight because regardless of, yes, Iran this, Iran that, at the end of the day, we need to solve everything happening in Gaza, in the West Bank. And that will help us deal with Iran in the future. But for now, unfortunately, everything in Israel is connected about Iran nuclear program. And this is why I think that the chances of a new escalation are maybe higher than we think.
Yeah, they say that the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I hope that the politicians in Israel and Iran can listen to our conversation and hopefully think differently.